We got Michael in, is it Pocatello?
Yeah, it is.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing just fine. I'm a little starstruck right now. I'm a big fan.
Well, thanks.
Anyway, I guess the best thing right now is just to tell you a little bit about my little story here. I was raised a Mormon. 17 and a half years of my life I was a Mormon. And then I finally started to look into it, and then I stopped believing in it. I've read the Book of Mormon and the Bible all the way through. Have you read the Book of Mormon?
I read most of it.
You've read most of it?
I haven't dug through it in detail. I ordered a Book of Mormon and actually spent 2 hours on the phone with the person who calls to make sure you got the book. That was a fun conversation.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, they don't miss an opportunity for.
Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, I pretty much have been really happy as an atheist, not going to church and whatnot. I'm a real big fan of yours. I've actually watched a lot of the Atheist Experience on YouTube, and other big fans of other channels like Dark Matter 25 and Grappling Ignorance, and those guys, Thunderfoot. But I guess the reason I decided to take another look into the Mormon religion was because I have a girlfriend who's Mormon, and I'm actually about to ask her to marry me, and she doesn't want to marry outside of the Mormon church. So she's not going to force me to become a Mormon, but she asked me to take another look at it. Mm-hmm. So for the last couple of months, I've been going on to Mormon.org and going onto their chat rooms where you can pull up a chat, you give them the email address, and talk with a missionary that's stationed in Utah. Mm-hmm. And I've been having this conversation with them, and finally, almost every time they've asked me to try to talk to, I get into these in-depth conversations with them, and they encourage me to try to talk to a missionary. Well, my family is Mormon, so I really want to keep that on the low. I don't want my family to get involved in that. And anyway, so I finally just gave in and got back on there and asked to speak with a missionary. And I got a phone call from these two sister missionaries who were talking to me, and we had a rather long conversation. But one of the things that they had me do, and this is what's kind of planted a little seed of doubt in my head, was they told me to pray. They asked me to pray over the phone with them. And honestly, it was the first time I've ever prayed, since I was probably 16 years old. And I don't, I don't know. It's just I did approach it from a skeptical standpoint, but there's just something there, that they were trying to that they got me to do that, and it was really something interesting. But
I don't know what you mean by something there that got you to do that.
Well,
and how was it interesting?
Sorry. I ended up praying, and I don't know. I felt something different that I can't really describe. And but
so you had a change of mental state.
Yeah.
Okay, and you think that something supernatural caused that?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
How did you determine that was possibly the cause?
Well, that's a good point. That's why I like you, Matt. You're a very very logical guy.
Well, the issue here is that if you, okay, first off, there may be very simple explanations for what happened, right? But I think the bigger issue is just because you don't know something doesn't mean you can jump to a conclusion, right? The lack of evidence for something is not evidence for something else, right?
So right, I agree with that.
So like for example, I was a Baptist for any number of years and prayed frequently, and there were occasions where in church, when you're singing and praying and other stuff, that I would feel something, and the thing is, I always identified it as the presence of the Holy Spirit. Now, why did I do that? Well, because everybody else around me was claiming that this is, oh, yeah, I feel like that too, and that's the Holy Spirit. That's the explanation I was given, and I accepted it without question. As I got out of there, I found that I can have those same types of experiences from entirely secular sources. And so this is more about the way the human mind works. This is more about people getting together and participating in activities and feeling, joy and all human experience without there's no justification for claiming a supernatural source to it. And even if there were, even if we didn't have a justification for a supernatural source, but we had no reason to think that we understood why it happened, you still would be at the point of, I don't know. You couldn't then say, oh, I had this experience, and because I can't think of any better explanation, therefore Mormonism is true. I mean, that's a huge logical fallacy. That is the argument from ignorance, or the fallacy, the argument from ignorance, saying, I can't come up with an explanation, therefore this other one is suddenly plausible. It's especially when the explanation that you're leaping to is one that you could not possibly determine the plausibility of. There's no way to quantify the likelihood that this particular source that you'd like to attribute is truly associated. And in the largest and best studies on prayer, especially intercessory prayer, prayer fails. It fails to perform any better than chance, and in fact, when people know they're being prayed about, it does worse. They took heart patients and divided them up into groups where some were being prayed for and some weren't. And in each of the groups, some people knew that they were being prayed for. And of course, the ones that knew they were being prayed for ended up doing worse. And there's a speculation that there was some kind of performance anxiety, that they, they didn't want to make prayer look bad.
This is one of the bigger, best conducted prayer studies ever done. It was done by the Templeton Foundation, Templeton Society, is it?
Yep.
Yeah. If I could interrupt you, where could I find that study online?
Look up Templeton Prayer Study. That'd probably.
If you Google prayer study fails, it's the first result.
Okay. All right.
There's also a good website. Why doesn't God heal amputees? That goes into a lot of these sorts of things, and they do a pretty good job beating up on prayer.
But yeah, I encourage people to, keep looking. I wish you luck with your relationship and your further investigations and everything else. But you should never believe anything until you have a really good reason. And if I felt something is the best that you got, I couldn't believe anything.
Well, now see, there's something interesting there. Now, in one of these debates that I had on Mormon.org with these missionaries, there was a missionary by the name of Ben, didn't give me a last name, obviously, but he said that he believed, personally, through his own revelation, that the sixth sense of the human mind was not actually ESP, but rather, being able to, like emotion was the sixth sense. And, his evidence for that was, have you ever felt something in your gut, that had a gut feeling, and it turned out to be true? And there are some people, he says, that, have gut feelings and they're always true. And
well, those people can get $1 million from the James Randi Educational Foundation.
Really?
Anybody that would qualify as, some sort of supernatural, psychic power type thing. If your intuition was absolutely correct all the time, that's an easy $1 million from the JREF. It's a walk in the park. And curiously, nobody gets the $1 million. We tested over and over again. So
your story is anecdotal, and it's not particularly convincing.
Yeah, I think we talk about. I had a debate a week ago Thursday, and the video for it's actually online. You can click a link on our website to get to it. There's at least one or two other debates coming up, but during the Q&A portion, somebody brought up. It was actually, I think, the last question. What I thought about miracle claims, and of course, you hear these all the time, and some of them are truly miraculous sounding, and others are rather trivial, and none of them have any good evidence supporting them. Otherwise, we'd have Nobel Prizes awarded to people who had researched and confirmed miracles, and we would have the JREF handing out $1 million for miracles.
It'd be a different world.
It would be on the front page of every newspaper and every science journal, and researchers at every university would be running around to investigate all of these miracles, if in fact any of them had been confirmed. they're not confirmed. And when pressed on this, Mark, my opposition in the debate, talked a little bit about miracles that he'd seen. And to me, people are starting to use this word in a way that I think cheapens it, because, they're talking about miracles of, I've seen lives transformed. Bad people have become good. That's not a miracle. There's nothing miraculous about that. I've seen bad people become good people become bad. We've seen spontaneous remission of cancer, with and without prayer, by the way. So obviously, if it happens regularly, in a world where with 7 billion people and different interactions going on all the time, we're going to find all kinds of weird things that don't have explanations, and that's fine, and we should look for the explanations. But when people start to say that the explanation is their supernatural buddy, that's absurd. And that's where you get this.
That's a wild claim that needs to be supported.
Yeah, and if somebody says that their intuition is always correct. And by the way, you talked about sixth sense. There's a lot of senses: sense of direction, sense of heat and cold. All those things. What they're talking about is a sense. These gut feelings, these intuitions. That's not a sense. That's a guess. And somebody who can guess right 100% of the time can get $1 million from the JREF. All they got to do is set up the test.
They can get even more than that from the lottery.
Yeah. Why haven't these people intuited the numbers from the lottery? Yeah. Good point.
Well,
anyway,
maybe you didn't really mean it like 100% like that.
Oh.
Like
and the hedging starts. Yeah.
Getting wrecked.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, okay, I'll hit this last point, and then I got to get on to other callers because we only got like 20 some odd minutes left. The one you just said about that intuition of don't get in a car, you'll get in a wreck. Here's the thing about that. Not only is it extremely susceptible to confirmation bias, because if you don't get in the car, you're not going to get in a wreck. And so the only way to test it is to get in the car and see if you're wrong. And if you're only recording the ones that you think were right, I mean, there's no way to prove it. We can't rewind the clock and have them also get in the car to see what would have happened. So for them to claim that they're right simply means that they don't have a clue what it means to be right, because there's no way to confirm that they were right, unless they got in the car and had a wreck. And they did this consistently, in which case we'd take their license away. But in all seriousness, there's some of these things that you just can't confirm, and yet people assert them as if they are confirmed with unbelievable confidence. And there are others that, when tested, they fail. And we are very bad about estimating success rates. We are very prone to bias. We are infatuated with our own intellect and our own direct experiences. The people that we know make up our understanding of the world, and so our
we're
biases
wired to see patterns that may or may not be there, and all these sorts of things, right?
When you interact with people and you start thinking that everybody acts this certain way, when really it's just a limited set of people that you've interacted with have this, this certain action. If you look a little more broadly, you find that it's not true, and that's the one of the many problems. There's confirmation bias. There's small sample sets. And then there's the sharpshooter fallacy, where when they think that they got something right, they draw the bullseye around it and ignore all the misses. But anyway, I got to let you go, Michael. I appreciate the call.
Oh, I appreciate it too, Matt. Hey, I can't thank you enough, man. You helped me out.
Sure, thanks a lot.